3 weeks had passed since the battle in the canyon. Danny Warren lay in a medical bed in the colony's small hospital, wrapped in bandages and connected to machines that beeped and hummed. The doctors had done their best with limited resources, stitching his wounds and setting his broken ribs. They told him he was lucky to be alive. He did not feel lucky. He felt tired and sore and ready to get back to work. Vethral was in the bed next to his. The Cathari warrior had been transferred from the colony's medical bay to a more advanced facility on a Cathari cruiser that had arrived 2 days after the battle. But she had refused to leave until Danny was stable enough to be left alone. Now she sat on the edge of her bed, her newly regenerated legs still weak but functional. Her armor had been replaced with fresh plates, gleaming and unblemished. She looked like a proper soldier again, proud and strong. But when she looked at Danny, her compound eyes held something soft. "The data core has been transmitted to our fleet command," she said. "The information you helped save will allow us to predict Varak movements for the next 3 cycles. Thousands of lives will be protected because of what you did." Danny shrugged, then winced at the pain in his chest. "I did not do much. Just made a lot of noise and got beaten up." Vethral made a clicking sound that Danny had come to recognize as laughter. "You killed a Varak with a knife. Our greatest warriors have failed to do what you did with advanced weapons and years of training. And you did it to protect someone you had never met before." "I told you," Danny said. "Where I come from, you do not leave people behind." Vethral was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into a pouch at her belt and withdrew a small object. It was a metal disc, inscribed with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as Danny watched. "This is a mark of the Cathari warrior caste," she said. "It is given only to those who have proven themselves in battle, to those who have shown courage beyond measure." She pressed the disc into Danny's hand. "I spoke with my commanders," she continued. "I told them what you did. How you stood against a monster with nothing but determination and a refusal to abandon a stranger. They did not believe me at first. Humans are not known for such things in our records." Danny looked at the disc. It was warm in his palm, almost alive. What changed their minds? "The body," Vethral said. "We retrieved the Varak's remains for study. The wounds told the story. The evidence was undeniable. A single human, armed with primitive tools, had brought down one of the most feared predators in the galaxy." She leaned closer, her mandibles clicking softly. "The story has spread, Danny, not just through my fleet, but through all of Cathari space. They are calling you the Guardian, the one who shields the fallen. Already, there are requests from our high command." Danny raised an eyebrow. "Requests for what?" "For humans," Vethral said. "The Varak are becoming more aggressive, more organized. We believe there may be a controlling intelligence behind them now, directing their movements. The war is escalating, and we need allies." She gestured toward the window, where the orange sky of Veros 4 stretched to the horizon. "Your species has something we do not," she said. "Something that cannot be taught or engineered. You call it stubbornness. We call it the fire that does not die. The ability to stand and fight when all logic says you should run." Danny thought about the moment in the canyon when he had decided to stay. He had not thought about logic or odds or survival chances. He had simply seen someone who needed help and had refused to walk away. "I am just a surveyor," he said. "I map rocks for a living. I am not a soldier." "Neither was I when I first faced battle," Vethral replied. "Soldiers are not born. They are made in moments of choice. And you have already made yours." She stood up, her new legs steady beneath her. Outside, Danny could hear the sound of a shuttle approaching. The Cathari cruiser was calling Vethral home. "I will return," she said. "My commanders want to establish formal contact with your colony, with your species. They want to discuss an alliance. Danny sat up in his bed, ignoring the protest of his wounded ribs. An alliance against the Vorak? Against everything that threatens the innocent, Vethral said. My people are strong, but we are few. Yours are fragile, but you are many. And you have something we lack. The willingness to stand in the gap for strangers. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. She placed her clawed hand on Danny's shoulder. You asked me once why the Kethari are known as fearsome warriors. It is because we were engineered for battle, given bodies built for war. But you, Danny Warren, you showed me what true courage looks like. It is not the absence of fear. It is not superior strength or weapons. It is the choice to stand when everything tells you to run. The sound of the shovel grew louder. Vethral stepped back and raised her hand in a formal salute, the gesture of one warrior to another. When I return, there will be much to discuss. My people and yours have much to learn from each other. But know this, Guardian. Whatever comes next, you have earned a place in Kethari history. The human who stood against the monster. The surveyor who became a shield. Danny returned the salute as best he could from his hospital bed. I will be here. Just try not to crash any more ships in my canyon. Vethral made that clicking laugh again. Then she turned and walked out of the medical bay. Her stride steady and proud. Danny lay back in his bed and looked at the metal disc in his hand. The pattern seemed to form an image now, a figure standing before a great beast, arms raised in defiance. He thought about what Vethral had said, about alliances and wars and the future of two species. It was a lot to take in for a man who had spent the last 3 years mapping rocks in the Badlands. But then again, 3 weeks ago he had been just a surveyor. Now he was something else. Something more. The door to the medical bay opened, and the colony administrator walked in. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, and she looked at Danny with an expression that mixed annoyance and admiration. Mr. Warren, she said, I have just received a communication from Earth. It seems your little adventure has attracted some attention. Danny sighed. I was hoping to keep things quiet. Too late for that, the administrator said. The story is already spreading across human space. A surveyor who killed a Vorak to protect an alien stranger. The news networks are calling you a hero. She set a tablet on his bedside table. The screen showed messages, hundreds of them, from people across the galaxy. You have also received 17 job offers, 3 marriage proposals, and an invitation to address the United Earth Council. Danny looked at the messages and felt a strange sensation in his chest. Not pain this time. Something else. Something that felt almost like hope. What happens now? He asked. The administrator smiled. It was a rare expression on her usually stern face. Now, Mr. Warren, you get better. And then we figure out how to change the galaxy. She turned and left him alone with his thoughts. Then he looked out the window at the orange sky of Veros 4, somewhere up there. Among the stars, Vethral was returning to her people. Somewhere out there, the Vorak were still hunting, still killing, still spreading across the galaxy like a plague. But now there was a chance. A small chance, born in a dusty canyon where a human had refused to abandon a stranger. A chance that two species might stand together. Against the darkness. Danny closed his eyes and smiled. It was going to be an interesting future. The Vorak pulled itself from the rubble with agonizing slowness. Half its legs were useless now, crushed by the falling stone. Its armor was cracked and broken, revealing the dark flesh beneath. Ichor poured from wounds all over its body, leaving dark stains on the rocks, but it was still alive. Still moving, still hunting. Danny watched it emerge and felt something strange happen inside him. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach. But alongside the fear was something else. Something hard, And stubborn and very human Dot, he was not going to let this thing win. Danny looked around for anything he could use as a weapon. His mining laser was gone, lost somewhere in the rock slide. His explosive charges were spent. All he had left was the knife on his belt and the length of cable in his pocket. He drew the knife. It was a simple tool, meant for cutting rope and opening containers. Against the Varak, it was pathetic, but it was what he had. The creature finished extracting itself from the debris and turned to face him. Its movements were jerky and uncoordinated now, like a machine running on failing power. But its eyes were still fixed on Danny. Still burning with that terrible purpose Dot, it took a step toward him. Then another. Each movement seemed to cost it tremendous effort. Ichor dripped from its wounds, leaving a trail on the canyon floor. Danny held his ground. His legs wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to find cover, to do anything except stand here waiting for death. But he ignored those instincts. He thought of Vethral, lying helpless in the wreckage behind him. He thought of all the people who had ever counted on him. He thought of what it meant to be human. The Varak was 5 meters away now, close enough for Danny to see the individual plates of its ruined armor. Close enough to smell the sickly sweet odor of its blood. Danny raised his knife. "Come on, men," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "I am still here." The creature lunged. Even broken and bleeding, it moved faster than anything that Psi should move. Danny tried to dodge, but his injured body betrayed him. He was too slow. The Vorak's claw caught him across the chest, tearing through his surveyor's jacket and the flesh beneath. Pain exploded through Danny's body. He was thrown backward, crashing into a pile of rocks. Blood soaked through his shirt, hot and wet. He tried to get up, but his arms would not support him. The Vorak loomed over him. Its jaws opened wide, revealing rows of teeth slick with saliva. This was it. The end. Danny looked up at the monster and felt a strange calm settle over him. He had done everything he could. He had fought with everything he had. If this was how it ended, at least he had not run away. But then he heard something. A sound that did not belong to the Varak. A sound of scraping metal and clicking mandible stot veth single quotes real. The Cathari warrior had somehow dragged herself from the wreckage. Her broken leg trailed behind her, leaving a dark smear on the ground. She was pulling herself forward with her arms, her face contorted with pain and determination. In her hand, she held a plasma pistol. The Varak sensed her presence and began to turn. But it was too slow, too damaged, too focused on its original prey. Vethral fired. The plasma bolt struck the Varak in its already damaged chest, burning through cracked armor and into the flesh beneath. The creature screamed and staggered backward, smoke rising from the wound. Vethral fired again. And again. Each bolt found the same spot, burning deeper, wider. The Varak tried to charge her, but its legs gave out. It collapsed to the ground, clawing at the stone, still trying to reach her even as its body failed. Danny forced himself to move. He crawled across the ground, his chest screaming with pain, until he reached the fallen creature. Its sensory organs tracked him weakly, but it could no longer strike. It could no longer do anything except die. Danny pulled himself up onto the creature's back. He raised his knife and found the gap where Vethral's plasma bolts had burned through the armor. He could see pulsing tissue beneath, something vital. He drove the knife down with both hands. The Varak convulsed beneath him. A terrible sound emerged from its jaws, something between a scream and a moan. Danny pulled the knife out and stabbed again. And again. Finally, the creature went still. Danny rolled off its body and lay on his back, staring up at the orange sky. His chest was on fire. His vision was going dark around the edges. But he was alive. They were both alive. He heard Vethral dragging herself toward him. A moment later, her face appeared above his, her compound eyes filled with an emotion he could not quite read. "Human," she said. "Danny, can you hear me?" "Yes," Danny managed. His voice sounded very far away. "You killed it," she said. There was wonder in her voice. "You killed a Varrock. No human has ever done that." Danny tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough. "We killed it," he said. "Together." Vethral was quiet for a moment. Then she said something in her own language, a series of clicks and whistles that his translator could not parse. It sounded like a prayer or maybe an oath. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why did you stay? You could have run. You could have survived. Why did you risk everything for a stranger?" Danny closed his eyes. The darkness was getting deeper now. He knew he needed medical attention soon, or he would not make it. But Vethral's question deserved an answer. "Because you needed help," he said. "Because something was trying to hurt you. Where I come from, that is all the reason you need." Vethral made a sound that might have been a sob. Her clawed hand found his and held it gently. "My people have stories about humans," she said. "We call you the mad species. The ones who do not know when to quit, who fight when they should flee and stand when they should fall. I always thought these were exaggerations." She squeezed his hand. "I was wrong." Danny opened his eyes and looked at her. "My communicator," he said. "In my belt. Can you reach it?" Vethral found the device and activated it. A burst of static emerged, followed by a voice. "This is Veros 4 Colony Control. Danny, is that you? We detected explosions in the eastern Badlands. What is going on out there?" Danny took the communicator with trembling hands. "I need medical evacuation at these coordinates," he said. "2 wounded. 1 human, 1 Cathari. Serious injuries." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned, filled with questions. Danny did not answer them. He let the communicator fall from his hand and lay back on the ground. The sky above was turning gold as the twin suns began their descent. "Help is coming," he said to Vethral. "Just hold on." The Cathari warrior looked at the dead monster beside them. She looked at the human who had refused to abandon her. And for the first time in her life, she began to understand why her people's legends spoke of humans with such a mixture of fear and awe. "I will hold on," she said. "You taught me how." They lay there together, the alien warrior and the human surveyor, waiting for rescue. The canyon was quiet now, except for the whisper of wind through the rocks. And somewhere in the wreckage of the crashed ship, the data core blinked steadily, carrying information that would change the course of a war. But that was a story for another day. The Varrock emerged from the shadows at the far end of the canyon, and Danny got his first clear look at the damage he had done. One of its 6 legs was crushed and useless, dragging behind the creature like dead weight. Cracks ran across its chest armor, and dark ichor oozed from a dozen wounds. Its movements were slower, more deliberate, but its eyes were still fixed on him. Still burning with hunger and hate, Danny stood his ground in front of the crashed ship. Behind him, Vethral lay helpless in the wreckage. If he ran, the Varrock would kill her first. He could not let that happen. The creature stopped about 15 meters away. Its head tilted to one side, studying him. Perhaps it was confused. Perhaps it had never encountered prey that refused to flee. Or perhaps it was simply savoring the moment before the kill. Danny raised his nearly empty mining laser. "Come on then," he said. His voice was steadier than he expected. "Let us finish this." The Varrock charged. Even wounded, the creature was terrifyingly fast. Danny fired his laser, aiming for the cracks in its armor. The beam found one of the wounds and burned deeper, causing the Varrock to stumble. But it did not stop. It kept coming, closing the distance in seconds. Danny threw himself to the right as massive claws swept past his face. He felt the wind of the strike, felt the heat of the creature's body. He rolled and came up running, heading for the canyon wall. The Vorak turned and followed. Its damaged legs slowed it, but not enough. Danny could hear it getting closer with each passing second. He reached the base of the wall and began to climb. The rock here was rough and broken, offering plenty of handholds. Danny pulled himself upward with desperate strength. His fingers digging into cracks and ledges below him, the Vorak slammed into the wall. The impact sent shockwaves through the stone. Danny lost his grip and nearly fell, but he caught himself at the last moment and kept climbing. The creature could not follow him directly. Its bulk was too great for the narrow ledges, but it could reach. One massive claw swept upward, striking the wall just below Danny's feet. Rock exploded outward, showering him with debris. Danny climbed faster. His arms burned. His fingers bled. But he did not stop. He reached a narrow ledge about 10 meters up, just out of the Vorak's reach. The creature screamed in frustration below him, clawing at the wall, tearing chunks of stone away. But it could not reach him here. Danny looked up. The fault line he had identified during his surveys ran along the canyon wall about 5 meters above his current position. If he could place his explosive charge there, the detonation would bring down a massive section of rock. The Vorak was directly below. The falling debris would bury it completely. But he had to get higher, and the Vorak was not giving him the chance. The creature backed away from the wall, then ran forward and leaped. Its claws found purchase on the rock face, and it began to haul itself upward. The stone crumbled and cracked beneath its weight, but the Vorak did not care. It was coming for him. Danny looked around for options. The ledge extended along the wall for several meters before ending at a sheer drop. There was no way forward, no way back. The only path was up. He reached for the next handhold and pulled himself higher. The Vorak was gaining, its claws tearing into the rock just meters below. Danny could feel the vibration of its ascent through the stone. 3 meters to go. Danny reached up and grabbed a jutting piece of rock. It held for a moment, then cracked and came loose in his hand. He swung out over empty space, holding on with one hand, his legs dangling above the monster below. The Vorak lunged upward. Its jaws snapped shut centimeters from Danny's feet. He felt the rush of air, smelled the creature's foul breath. Danny swung his body and found another handhold. He pulled himself up, gasping, his heart pounding. 2 meters to go. The Vorak tried to climb higher, but the rock here was too fragile to support its weight. Pieces of the wall broke away, sending the creature sliding back down several meters. It screamed in rage and tried again. Danny used the distraction to climb the final distance. He reached the fault line and pressed himself against the wall. His feet balanced on a ledge barely wide enough to stand on. The crack in the rock ran directly above his head, a dark line of weakness in the stone. He pulled out his last explosive charge and wedged it into the crack. His hands were shaking now. The Vorak was climbing again, finding a different path, circling around to approach him from the side. Danny armed to charge and looked down. The creature was almost level with him now, approaching along a series of broken ledges. In a few more seconds, it would be close enough to strike. He had to time this perfectly. The Vorak reached a ledge about 3 meters away and paused. Its sensory organs swept over Danny, calculating angles and distances. Then it gathered itself for a final lunge. Danny pressed the detonator. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The fault line split open, and the entire section of wall above Danny began to slide. He felt the ledge beneath his feet crumble and knew he had no choice. He jumped. For a moment, he was falling through empty air, surrounded by tumbling rocks and clouds of dust. The Vorak screamed somewhere below him, a sound of pain and fury. Then Danny hit something hard. and the world dissolved into chaos. He tumbled down the slope of debris, bouncing off rocks and rolling through dust. Pain erupted across his body as he struck stone after stone. He tried to protect his head with his arms, but impacts came from every direction. Finally, he came to rest at the bottom of the canyon. He lay there for a long moment, unable to move, unable to think. Everything hurt. His ribs were cracked, maybe broken. His left arm would not respond properly. Blood ran down his face from a gash in his scalp, but he was alive. Danny forced himself to roll onto his stomach. He pushed himself up onto his hands and knees, then collapsed again. The second attempt was more successful. He managed to get one foot under him, then the other. He stood swaying in the dust and looked back at the wall. A massive pile of rubble now covered the area where the Varak had been climbing. Tons of rock and stone, enough to bury anything. Enough to kill even an engineered monster. Danny let out a long breath. It was over. He turned and began limping toward the crash site. Vethral was still there, still alive. He had to get her out, had to get them both back to the colony. They would need medical attention. They would need to transmit the data from her ship. They would need to warn people about the Varak. He had taken maybe 10 steps when he heard the sound, a grinding, scraping noise. Rock shifting against rock. Something moving in the debris behind him. Danny stopped. His blood turned to ice. Slowly, he looked back. A single black claw emerged from the rubble. Then another. The Varak was digging itself free, pushing aside stones that should have crushed it completely. Its armor was shattered now, its body broken and bleeding from countless wounds. But its eyes still burned with that terrible hunger. It would not stop. It would never stop. Danny had nothing left. No weapons. No explosives. No strength. He could barely stand, let alone fight. But he turned to face the monster anyway. Because behind him was a wounded warrior who had trusted him. Because running away was not something he knew how to do. Because even now, at the end of everything, he was still human. And humans did not abandon the fallen. Danny Warren wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the scanner in his hand. The reading showed nothing special, just the same rocks and minerals he'd been surveying for the past 3 years. Life on Varus 4 was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. The mining colony had only 47 people, and most days Danny worked alone in the Badlands, mapping the terrain for future excavation sites. He was 34 years old and had come to this distant world because Earth felt too crowded and too complicated. Out here, among the red rocks and orange dust, things made sense. You did your job. You collected your pay. You watched the twin suns set over the canyon walls. Simple. Danny was packing up his equipment when something caught his eye. A streak of light crossed the pale sky, moving too fast and too low to be a normal ship. He shielded his eyes and watched as the object dropped toward the horizon. Smoke trailed behind it. Fire bloomed along its hull. Then came the sound of impact, a deep boom that echoed through the canyons. A plume of dust and debris rose into the air about 2 kilometers to the east. Danny stood very still for a moment. Colony protocol was clear about situations like this. He was supposed to report the crash to the settlement and wait for a proper response team. He was not supposed to investigate alone. He was definitely not supposed to put himself in danger. He grabbed his gear bag and started walking toward the crash site. The canyon where the ship had fallen was narrow and deep, with walls of dark red stone rising on both sides. Danny climbed down carefully, his boots finding holds in the rough rock. The air smelled like burning metal and something else, something sharp and unfamiliar. The ship lay at the bottom of the canyon, broken and smoking. It was not a human vessel. Danny had seen enough alien craft in his life to recognize the design. This was a Cathari scout ship, built for speed and stealth. The insectoid species was known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors and proud soldiers. They did not come to remote human colonies without good reason. Danny approached the wreckage slowly. The hull had torn open on impact, exposing the interior. He could see sparking wires and shattered control panels. Emergency lights flickered weakly inside. Then he heard the sound. A low clicking noise, like someone tapping stones together. It was coming from inside the ship. Danny climbed through the torn hull and found her. The HFY warrior lay against a broken support beam, her long limbs bent at painful angles. Her armor, which should have been smooth and gleaming, was cracked and blackened by fire. Her compound eyes, normally bright with intelligence, were dim with pain. She was still alive, but barely. Danny knelt beside her. He had never been this close to a HFY before. Up close, he could see the delicate patterns on her exoskeleton, the way her mandibles moved slightly with each labored breath. She was taller than him, maybe 2 meters when standing, but right now she looked small and broken. The warrior's eyes focused on him. She made a series of clicking sounds that his translator struggled to interpret. Then, slowly she spoke in broken human standard. "You are human," she said. Her voice was rough, damaged. "Yes," Danny said. "My name is Danny. I saw your ship come down. I came to help." The warrior made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a cough of pain. "Help. You cannot help me, human. My leg is shattered. My internal systems are failing. I am dying." Danny looked at her leg and saw that she was right. The limb was crushed beneath a fallen beam, twisted in ways that no living thing should twist. He had basic medical training, but nothing that could fix this. "I can try to move this beam," he said. "Maybe if I can free your leg, we can get you to the colony. We have medical facilities. Not great ones, but something." "No," the warrior said. She reached out with one clawed hand and gripped his arm. Her strength surprised him despite her injuries. "Listen to me, human. My name is Vethrol. I am an intelligence officer of the HFY Fifth Fleet. I was carrying critical data about enemy movements when my ship was attacked." "Attacked by what?" Danny asked. Vethrol's grip tightened. "A Varrock." Danny felt his blood go cold. He had heard stories about the Varrock. Everyone had. They were engineered killing machines, created by some ancient civilization that had long since turned to dust. They hunted across the stars, tracking their prey through hyperspace itself. Even the mightiest warships feared them. "A Varrock followed you here?" Danny said. "It crippled my ship in orbit," Vethrol said. "I managed to escape, but it will have tracked my descent. It is coming. It will be here soon." As if summoned by her words, Danny's scanner began to beep. He pulled it from his belt and looked at the display. Something large was approaching from the north. Something very large. "You must go," Vethrol said. She released his arm and pointed toward a compartment near the back of the ruined ship. "There is a data core in that storage unit. Take it and run. Get it to your people. Get it to anyone who will listen. The information it contains could save thousands of lives." Danny looked at the approaching signal on his scanner. It was moving fast, covering ground at a terrifying pace. He looked back at Vethrol. "What about you?" he asked. "I will die here," she said simply. "The Varrock will kill me and consume my remains. It is the way of things. But if you take the data core, my death will have meaning. My mission will be complete." Danny stood up slowly. He walked to the storage compartment and found the data core, a small device that fit in the palm of his hand. He tucked it into his pocket. Then he turned and walked back to Vethrol. "I am not leaving you," he said. The HFY warrior stared at him with her compound eyes. For a long moment, she seemed unable to process what he had said. "Human, you do not understand. The Varrock cannot be stopped. Not by you. Not by anyone. If you stay here, you will die. Maybe, Danny said. He knelt beside her again and began looking through his gear bag. But where I come from, we do not leave people behind. Not friends, not strangers, not anyone. I am not your people, Vethral said. I am Kithari. We have never been allies. You are hurt, Danny said. Something is coming to kill you. That is all I need to know. He pulled out his equipment and laid it on the ground. A mining laser designed for cutting through rock. A handful of explosive charges used for clearing debris. A flare gun with 3 cartridges. A length of cable. A knife, not much. Not nearly enough, but it was what he had. Outside the wreckage, Danny heard something. A distant sound, like thunder rolling across the Badlands. But it was not thunder. It was footsteps. Heavy footsteps, shaking the ground with each impact. Danny climbed to the breach in the hull and looked out. The Vorak crested the ridge at the far end of the canyon. It was enormous, at least 3 meters tall, covered in armor plates of black chitin that seemed to absorb the light. 6 limbs carried its massive body with horrible grace. Its head was a nightmare of mandibles and sensory organs, and when it opened its mouth, Danny could see rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. It saw them. It screamed. A sound that vibrated through Danny's chest and turned his legs to water. And then it charged. Danny had exactly 3 seconds to think before the Vorak would reach them. 3 seconds to process the fact that a creature from every spacer's nightmare was running straight at him. 3 seconds to decide what to do. He spent one of those seconds being afraid. He was human, after all. Fear was natural. Fear was healthy. Fear kept you alive long enough to do something about the danger. He spent the second pushing that fear down into a small box in the back of his mind. He would deal with it later, assuming there was a later. He spent the 3rd second grabbing his mining laser and firing. The beam hit the Vorak square in the chest. The creature did not slow down. The energy scored a black mark across its armored hide, leaving a trail of smoke, but the beam did not penetrate. Danny kept firing anyway, adjusting his aim, trying to find a weak point. The Vorak covered the distance between them with terrifying speed. Danny threw himself to the side, just as massive claws swept through the space where he had been standing. The creature's momentum carried it past him and into the hull of the crashed ship. Metal screamed as the Vorak tore through the wreckage like it was made of paper. Danny scrambled to his feet and ran. Not away from the canyon, but along it, keeping the walls close on one side. He needed space to think. He needed time to plan. Behind him, he heard the Vorak extracting itself from the wreckage. He heard Vethral cry out in pain as the ship shifted around her. Then he heard those heavy footsteps again. Turning, following. It was hunting him now. Danny ran faster. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he did not slow down. The canyon twisted ahead of him, narrowing between 2 massive rock formations. He remembered this place from his surveys. The walls here were unstable, weakened by centuries of erosion. He reached the narrow passage and spun around. The Vorak was 20 meters behind him and closing fast. Danny raised his mining laser and fired again, not at the creature this time, but at the rock wall beside it. The laser cut through the stone. Cracks spread outward from the point of impact. A section of the wall groaned and shifted. The Vorak did not even glance at the falling rocks. It simply plowed through them, sending stone fragments flying in all directions. A few pieces struck its hide and bounced away without effect. Danny swore under his breath and kept running. The canyon opened up ahead into a wider space, a natural amphitheater surrounded by high walls. Danny had surveyed this area last month. He knew every rock, every shadow, every potential hiding place. He also knew that hiding would not work. The Varak had tracked Vethral across light years of space. It would find him no matter where he hid Dot. Danny stopped in the center of the amphitheater and turned to face his pursuer. The Varak slowed as it entered the open space, its sensory organs sweeping back and forth. It was being cautious now, studying its prey. Up close, the creature was even more terrifying than the stories described. Its body was a perfect killing machine, designed by beings who had devoted their entire civilization to the art of death. Every angle, every curve, every joint was optimized for hunting and destruction. Danny was a surveyor with a mining laser and some explosive charges. The mismatch was almost laughable. Almost. Okay, Danny said to himself. You cannot hurt it directly. Fine. So you make it hurt itself. He looked around the amphitheater, calculating distances and angles. 3 rock pillars stood at irregular intervals, remnants of some ancient geological process. The walls were steep but climbable in places. And directly overhead, a massive outcropping of stone jutted from the canyon rim, casting a shadow over half the amphitheater. Danny had an idea. It was a terrible idea, but it was the only one he had. He raised his flare gun and fired directly at the Varak's face. The flare burst against the creature's sensory cluster in a shower of bright sparks. The Varak screamed and reared back, its claws slashing blindly at the air. Danny used those precious seconds to run toward the first rock pillar. He reached the pillar and placed one of his explosive charges at its base. Then he kept running, circling around to the second pillar, then the third. At each one, he placed another charge. The Varak recovered from the flare and came after him, but Danny stayed just ahead, using the pillars as obstacles to slow its pursuit. When all 3 charges were placed, Danny ran toward the canyon wall and began to climb. The Varak followed. It could not climb the way Danny could, but it could dig its claws into the rock and haul itself upward with brute strength. Stone crumbled beneath its weight as it ascended. Danny reached a narrow ledge about 5 meters up and pressed himself against the wall. He pulled out his detonator and waited. The Varak was directly between the 3 pillars now, pulling itself up the canyon wall just below Danny's position. Its mandibles clicked with anticipation. It knew it had him cornered. Danny pressed the button. All 3 charges detonated simultaneously. The rock pillars exploded at their bases, sending massive chunks of stone flying inward. The Varak was struck from 3 directions at once. It lost its grip on the wall and fell, crashing to the ground amid a rain of debris. Danny did not waste time celebrating. He climbed down as fast as he could, scraping his hands and knees on the rough stone. He needed to get back to Vethral. He needed to make sure she was still alive. He was halfway down when he heard the sound of shifting rubble behind him. Danny looked over his shoulder and saw the Varak rising from the pile of broken stone. It was hurt now. He could see that. One of its legs dragged uselessly behind it, and cracks had appeared in its chest armor. Dark fluid leaked from wounds in its hide, but it was still alive. Still standing. Still hunting. The creature turned its damaged head toward Danny. Even through the pain, he could sense its focus, its determination. It would not stop until one of them was dead. Danny dropped the rest of the way to the ground and ran. His body was screaming at him to rest. His muscles burned. His breath came in ragged gasps. But he pushed on, racing back through the canyon toward the crash site. The Varak followed more slowly now, hampered by its injuries. But it followed. Always following. Danny reached the wreckage and found Vethral still conscious, still trapped beneath the fallen beam. Her compound eyes found him as he climbed through the broken hull. "You are still alive," she said. There was wonder in her voice. "So far," Danny gasped. He collapsed beside her, trying to catch his breath. "I heard it. Not enough to kill it, but I heard it. No one hurts a Vorak. Vethral said. They are invincible. Nothing is invincible, Danny said. Everything has a weakness. You just have to find it. He looked at the warrior's trapped leg. The beam had shifted during the Varak's earlier rampage, pressing down even harder. Vethral's face was tight with pain. I'm sorry, she said. I have brought death to your world. You should have left when you had the chance. Danny shook his head. I told you. I do not leave people behind. Outside, they could hear the Varak approaching. Its footsteps were slower now, uneven, but still coming. Always coming. Danny pulled out his last explosive charge and looked at it. One charge. One chance. He looked up at the canyon walls above the crash site. He remembered the data from his surveys. This section of the canyon was riddled with fault lines, weakened by the ship's impact. One well-placed explosion could bring down half the wall, but he would have to be up there to place it. And the Varak was between him and the only climbable path. Danny stood up and checked his mining laser. The power cell was nearly empty, but there was enough for a few more shots. He looked at Vethral. I have one more idea, he said. If it works, we might survive. And if it does not work... She asked. Danny smiled, though there was no humor in it. Then at least I will have tried. He climbed out of the wreckage and walked toward the approaching monster.